Hello, this is Teleprompter for Life. I've not made any YouTube videos in quite some time, but I was lured back in tonight when I heard Concordance's video about PZ Myers versus Thunderfoot. I was highly dismayed by many comments and analysis that Concordance made in this video, and I respect Concordance a great deal. Normally, I say Concordance is very thoughtful and very rational, but I think he has a few blind spots, and I'd like to see if I could respond to a few of his major points. First of all, when Concordance implied that Thunderfoot coming into feminism and the ensuing arguments without studying the evidence was neutral, an outsider, and rational, I thought that was a big mistake. This is the same fallacy that religious liberals make, who say that religious fundamentalists and atheists are equally bad, just because both use harsh words. Do you see why I was mad when Concordance made that analogy? Just because people use harsh words doesn't mean they're wrong. Sometimes you have to use harsh words to make your point, because that's the only way to penetrate the ignorance and the bias of people who are being closed-minded or just haven't had the opportunity to consider other people's opinions. I believe this applies to how religious people treat atheists, and I believe this applies to how Thunderfoot and other members of the atheist community treat women. This relates to my second point, that Thunderfoot was seen by Concordance as non-partisan. Concordance suspected that Thunderfoot was ousted from free thought blogs because he wasn't a partisan. No, this is not the case. Thunderfoot was not being nonpartisan, he was being ignorant. He was full of privilege that did not allow him to see the reality of the situation for women, and Thunderfoot refused to overcome his blindness, his privilege, and his ignorance. Thunderfoot was not acting rationally. Thunderfoot refused to act rationally, which relates to my next point, where Concordance says that the goal of the atheist community should be peaceful coexistence. That is a goal of the atheist community, but I think the foremost goal of the atheist community has to be overcoming bias and overcoming ignorance. If you look at the evolution-creationism debate, which Concordance mentioned with his Eugenie Scott analogy, I think you would agree. Overcoming ignorance about evolution is more important than having peaceful coexistence with creationists. The same thing applies to feminism. And the same thing applies to Thunderfoot. It's more important to correct this ignorance before it metastasizes than to peacefully coexist with ignorance that's harming real people and pretend that it's okay. We have all these ideas that we think it's okay to be angry about when it comes to religion, that we don't think it's okay to be angry about when it comes to feminism, and that's a huge double standard. People need to be made aware of this double standard. Finally, I like to argue that opposing ignorance isn't censorship. When Thunderfoot refused to be rational and refused to place the experience of other people above his own limited anecdotes, when Thunderfoot refused to consider the evidence before forming his opinion, he was acting in bad faith, to excuse the word faith from an atheist video. When Thunderfoot was thrown out of free thought blogs, it was because he refused to exemplify the values of rationality, and he supported ignorance by refusing to overcome his own male privilege and bias as someone who is uneducated about feminism and feminist issues, as Concordance himself stated. Now, I think the one who needs to take advice from Concordance about surrounding himself with views and evidence from other people is not PZ Myers, but Thunderfoot. And PZ Myers should not be condemned for combating ignorance from when people refuse to withdraw their own ignorance. Thunderfoot should be condemned for failing to act rationally, and for being defensive instead of seeking to overcome his own limitations. Thank you. I hope I can continue this dialogue with Concordance. I hope he sees this video, and I hope he strongly considers some of my points. Thank you very much.